Hello, this is Greg Alice from the Green Gregs, coming to you again with another in a series of my eyes wide open, head on a swivel news. This is the 10th of March, 2021. The time on deck is 2200 hours Central Standard Time. Ladies and gentlemen, what you didn't know, what you've not been told, is that simulations for almost 20 years now of warfare sims, have actually shown the U.S. losing to China. They've been classified. Not only that, they're now showing us losing faster. And each year we lose blindingly faster. Now we're talking like within a week. And the key flashpoint seems to be Taiwan. But let's not us forget the Senkaku Islands, Islands that Japan and China both claim, which is also heating up. And furthermore, China is targeting the U.S. territory where American citizens live, and there's lots of islands, of Guam. So we're going to get all into that. Ladies and gentlemen, I keep telling you that the international tensions are just ratcheting up. China, Iran, many other places, even North Korea, excuse me. The domestic tensions, and I don't even have to talk about that. You know that stuff's off the charts. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know that it's time to prepare, wow, you must have been glued in TV. But there are a lot of people who don't get it. So tell your friends, tell your family, share my videos to wake them up, because this is a eyes wide open and head on a swivel news series. And those of you that follow me, I call swivel heads, rather affectionately, I might say, because you guys are with it. You do have your eyes wide open and head on a swivel. So please subscribe to my channel, bang the update notification bell, and click all, and share this with your friends so they will know to get ready to prepare for the crazy times, for this roller coaster that we're getting on. And let's hope and pray that we can mitigate the bumps in this ride. Now, one of the ways to mitigate it is to be prepared for food. Now, I do a lot of videos on how to grow your own. I do videos on how to find things out in the wild, and that stuff is free. But, you know, sometimes you're just not going to get the calories, the protein, and other things you're going to need eating wild grains. And you might have to limit it because of oxalic acid. All that said, I've got a great deal right now. While you learn how to grow your own garden, food ready to go, that lasts 25 years. You get 20% off if you go to prepwithgreg.com, prepwithgreg.com. 20% off, and the links are below in the show notes and in the pin notes for my website there. And you get 2 of these that will give you 4-week supply of food that lasts 25 years. And that's a little better than 20% off. One of them, just slightly less, is a 2-week supply. Great deals. This food lasts, like I said, 25 years. It's great for bugging out. Only that, it comes in these nice little pouches in here. These are good sized pouches that are Milsons. That's 4 servings, guys, which is awesome. I've seen other companies have huge pouches, like, really, you need all that? And their food comes in big, hard to push across the finish on by their own videos, food. But see, this stuff is lightweight. It's freeze dried, but it's real food. It's not MRE junk, which I hate MREs. You get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which comes out to 2,000 calories a day. And you also get some desserts and drinks enough to ensure that you are a winner. And if you go to prepwithgreg.com, check on the My Patriot Supply logo. You can go in there and find lots of other options on the foods and many other prep and supplies that you should check out. There'll be good deals for you to take care of yourself and your family. Water filtration, air filtration, stuff to help start fires, and many other prep and gear type items. It will be of good use to you. Again, go to prepwithgreg.com, prepwithgreg.com, and like I said, there'll be links below. So all that said, let's get into this story, because it is something else, my friends. I'm gonna do a share screen, and I'm gonna show you a whole spate of articles on these topics, and they're gonna blow your socks off, because this stuff was classified. A lot of Americans just didn't know the advantages the Chinese, the People's Republic of China, I should say, have over the United States, because the Republic of China is also Chinese. Now, let me again reiterate, there are good people in every country of every race, creed, and color. They're good people who will give you the shirt off their backs in a moment's notice with good hearts. You'll find them everywhere. Nobody has a monopoly on good people, hardworking people, smart people, people with good souls. But there's also bad people everywhere. There's good and bad everywhere. And there's not really necessarily a greater mix of good or bad anywhere. It's that governments sometimes are more tyrannical in certain areas than others because they've managed to take control because they've had opportunities. And that may be coming here, my friend. So don't get the superiority complex about these things, okay? I'm just trying to tell you that some people have the misfortune to live in systems that do not promote liberty and tyranny. That do not promote liberty, they serve up tyranny. All right, so just as a little qualifier up front, I want to tell you that because there are two Chinas, the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China. One is living under a tyranny and projecting military aggression. The other is trying to defend themselves and their freedom lovers in the Republic of China, which is the older of the two Chinese governments. So it was never a providence of the People's Republic of China. It's not a breakaway province. They're living in exile on the island of what was once called Formosa that we know as Taiwan. Okay, I've said of that. All right, so let's get into this. Look at this, guys. Last fall, the United States Air Force simulated conflict set more than a decade in the future that began the Chinese biological attack that swept through U.S. bases and airships in the Indo-Pacific region. Then a major Chinese military exercise was used to cover up for the deployment of a massive invasion force. You know, they were always training, right? They always have these big exercises for training and so forth. Well, we always worry that sometimes those exercises might go active. And that's what this is talking about. Because anytime they really want to do something active, of course, they would disguise it first as an exercise. So you're just not quite on your full alerts. The simulation accumulated with Chinese missiles strikes raining down on U.S. bases and warships in the region and a lightning air and amphibious assault on the island of Taiwan. And here it says, this highly classified war game, which had not previously been made public, took place less than a year after the bug we talk about, know about, allegedly originated, you know where, you know, allegedly, supposedly. So, but the funny thing is, in the midst of our war game that we're conducting back in September, that was, you know, the latest one to reveal this stuff, the Chinese combat aircraft had crossed that median line with Taiwan, which it hadn't been doing before, and then did it 40 times, conducting simulated attacks on the island and also on the USS Roosevelt in one case, which is our aircraft carrier there. And they also simulated attacks on, you know, our Air Force base, the Anderson Air Force Base on the U.S. island, it's U.S. territory of Guam. That is a territory. That's not, you know, something we've taken. The people that are Americans, they actually vote in our elections. Guam, it's American. Okay, and we have lots of soldiers there too, lots of bases on Guam. So, yeah, if you might remember, I talked about them actually releasing a video depicting them attacking Guam. So, and, you know, playing all their little heroic music, you know, propaganda stuff. So, in case the U.S., well, I'm not reading that. I'll read all this stuff, guys. Now I was talking about where they simulated attacks on the USS Roosevelt. So look here. This month, the Council on Foreign Relations released a special report: the United States and China and Taiwan, a strategy to prevent war, it claimed. It talked about Taiwan being the, I'm going to skip the main flashpoint. We know that. And it said, more than a decade ago, our war games indicated, more than a decade ago, yes, early 2000s, so almost 20 years. Yeah, so they're being charitable here. It goes further back, the intel I have. Indicated that the Chinese were doing a good job on investing in military capabilities that would make our preferred model of expeditionary warfare, where we push forces forward and operate out of relatively safe bases and sanctuaries, increasingly difficult. You know, Air Force General S. Clinton Haynote, Deputy Chief of Staff of Strategy. So he made that statement, and he goes on further to say this. He said, ding, 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 ding. At that point, the trend in our war games was not just that we're losing, you saw it now, but we're losing faster. We're losing faster. See that? Boom, this is what I was talking about. I ain't upset, we're losing faster. After the 2018 war game, I distinctly remember one of our gurus of wargaming standing in front of the Air Force Secretary Chief of Staff and telling them we should never play this war game scenario of a Chinese attack on Taiwan again, because we know what is going to happen. It is so dispiriting. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were so depressed about the whole thing. They said, "Guy, we don't want to do this again. This is awful." The definitive answer is the U.S. military doesn't change course. We're going to lose fast. And so let me tell you what this is about. This is about something I told you about in the past. It's about this scenario where when we have gone in and hit places like Iraq, we have done it by setting up a whole lot of bases around the area and flying all these sorties right in there, boom, 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 air power, taking out their command communications, and then just strafing the heck out of them before we'd send anything else in. And it's all these sorties that gave us such an upper hand. But these sorties have a limitation on the range, especially for to conduct themselves effectively. And so China has seen this, and they realized that, you know, how we've been conducting this war. They were astonished at that Iraq war, the two Iraq wars we had, and they had been planning accordingly. And this is one of the reasons they've taken these seamounts and built military bases, you know, artificial islands, and claimed, you know, sea area way outside the bounds. It's been of anything way outside the bounds of anything international treaty or conventions ever accepted by seizing the South China Sea. And the reason they're doing this is they're being aggressive, but they're also trying to protect themselves and deny the United States the kind of capabilities to fly sorties like that. They're pushing us further out. They're pushing us further out. One of the chinks in the armor of that is indeed the island of Taiwan, which happens to be closer in a democracy that favors us. That is a severe chink in their armor, and China resents that. They'd like to take that chink out of their armor. And they could also, if they had Taiwan, use it to their advantage in other ways, which I'll show you here in a minute. But as you can see, so that plan that China has to push us further out is known as the anti-access aerial denial. That's what we call it, A2AD, A2AD, anti-access aerial denial. And so that's to keep us from getting in close to them. And to further accentuate that, they have developed all these missiles to throw at our aircraft carriers. So get this, guys. What's he saying here? Whenever we war gamed a Taiwan scenario over the years, our blue team routinely got us handed to it. We got our kicked. That's what they're saying. Because in that scenario, time is precious commodity, and it plays to the strength of China in terms of proximity and capabilities. I got that a little backwards, but yeah, this is David Achmanek, a senior RAND corporation analyst. Yeah, I've got a couple of friends that work for RAND. So there you go. He said, for that reason, I don't think we're much better off than a decade ago when we started taking this challenge more seriously. Now, what General High Note and some of these others are making a case for is that we need to change our strategy and how we equip our military. Instead of funding the kind of things we've been funding, we need to be funding more long-range, far-penetrating weapon systems. And you know, the old books of military strategy I studied when I was in high school. Yeah, I was studying military strategy in high school. I had books on that. It's always the guys who had the longest reach weapons that would dominate in battle. The longer your reach, the better, even hand-to-hand combat. If you had longer arms and longer swords, you had an advantage over that short guy with a short sword because you could reach further. And just think about the old comedy thing, showing guys fighting where the big guy just reaches out, puts his hand on top of the head of the other guy, and the other guy just frailing away and missing. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, it's kind of what we're talking about here. So we ought to repurpose our weapon systems for more long range. But we're not doing that. We're not changed our spending patterns. So let's see if it says this and then where it says this. Yeah. I've read so many articles on these things. Yeah, talking about Overmarch brief. General Mattis. The U.S. The strategy strongly favored a large number of long-range mobile strike systems. That's what he's talking about, what they need, including anti-ship cruise missile batteries, mobile rocket artillery system, unmanned mini-subs, and mines and robust surface-to-air missile defense for missile batteries for air defense. But that's not what we're spending on. We created a force that has resilience at its core. The red team looked at the force, knew that what it was. This is the ones that was playing against us. And Sam. All right, I'm not going to go all into this, guys. But despite loud alarms raised by the war games, the Pentagon has been slow to adjust its long-term spending plans to invest in the kind of military capabilities that are needed to defend Taiwan or contested island chains in the South China Sea. Instead of older weapon systems like the massive warships, short-range tactical fighter aircraft, and heavy tank battalions continue to enjoy support from loyal constituencies on both sides of the Pentagon and Congress. Why? Because those companies are already funded. They have momentum. They have lobbyists. They have money. And they keep stuffing that money in the pockets of congressmen and other people's campaigns coffers to say, hey, keep us going, because they don't want to lose the jobs they got. They don't want to transition our forces to things that have more reach, the further range that we need in a situation like this. So we're being short-changed with short-sighted, short-range weapon systems. On a somber note, high note potent that the blue team, which was our team in the war games, right? Red team was the other guys. Force posture tested in recent, force posture tested in recent war games is still not one reflected in the current Defense Department spending plans. So they actually used a better blue team than what we have available. So what he's saying here. So that is really the short thing. The blue team was a better blue team than what is being funded. So they tried to give us an advantage in war game, and we still got it handed to us. And here's why it matters, guys. This is what I said, the point I was going to come back to. In World War II, we're talking about the island of Formosa, which we also call Taiwan. In World War II, the island was regarded as an unsinkable aircraft carrier that could dominate Asia. Of course, when it's only the government from that island, or their prospects for dominating are somewhat less. But if it's the forward island of China, look out. That thinking has changed little since. The worry is that if the Chinese were able to gain control of Taiwan, that it would enable it to more easily project its military power further out into the Western Pacific. See, we're already talking about and concerned about how far they can project their power, and they're stopping us from being able to reach in. Well, then that just pushes it further out and gives them a huge military advantage. So right now it's a chink in their armor, but if they took it, it would suddenly become a huge military advantage for China. So this is why it looks like China may be wanting to take Taiwan. And to further underscore this, it's been said now that they may be taking Taiwan within 6 years. I'll show a quote on that here shortly, I hope. And again, you know, we sometimes I've reported on the type of missiles they had, the island killers, you know, the D-21s, 26s, the aircraft killers. But this article here makes a lot of sense. It says, let's not go down the road of gushing over various Chinese missiles with their ranges and capabilities. While important, it's the amount of missiles that could be aimed at U.S. Navy and Taiwan scenario that's the real threat. Even the best missile defenses in the world, which the United States holds in its possession, and this guy says I'm a big supporter of, might not be enough. The challenge itself is not an easy one to overcome. All China would have to do is send out a massive barrage of missiles, and forget from the type, again, he says, the cruise or ballistic, or the domain from which they're launched, land, sea, or air, with the goal of overwhelming U.S. Navy defenses. I mean, you shoot so much stuff that we just can't stop it all. That's what he's talking about. We've run out of munitions or whatever, or we just can't point and aim at enough of it because they're raining missiles down on us. That's what we're talking about here. So, so it overwhelmed the interceptors, the attack would. That is what they're saying there. Think about it. We could someday see the scenario where American forces at sea will, with a fixed amount of defensive countermeasures facing the enemy with large numbers of cruise and ballistic missiles, will have the potential to simply overwhelm them. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Here, that's one of our aircraft carriers. Does China have a master plan to destroy the U.S. Navy in war? Well, yes. Can they? Well, according to these training exercises, I call it simulation, or it's not really a simulation, but they actually do training exercises and simulations. Yeah, looks like it. So now here's another sobering thought here. Admiral Philip Davidson. I think I can listen here twice. Admiral Philip Davidson. He is the top officer of the Indo-Asia Pacific Command. I got this worded wrong here. He basically said that he expects that China would take Taiwan within the next decade. They might try it, possibly within 6 years. So Taiwan is clearly one of their ambitions. It says, I think the threat is manifest during this decade. In fact, in the next 6 years. That is what he said. And then he went on to say, Guam is a target today. So what was I talking about, Guam? Yeah. See, Guam is a really good forward base in the United States. It's the closest thing to them. China doesn't want us to have that. So he urged lawmakers to approve the installation of anti-missile battery in Guam. So what he's looking for is the Aegis ashore system. Aegis is, a ship that has, missiles. The Aegis missile is a missile that's fired from an Aegis ship that is basically an SDI anti-missile missile. Could take out intercontinental ballistic missiles even. That's a very capable system, but they also have Aegis ashore that you can mount on land, and as a system we've developed. My friend Ambassador Hank Cooper says we need to put those down somewhere around Eglin Air Force Base to defend our soft underbelly, and I agree with him. But we're not seeing it happen, are we? Protect our power grid in case somebody wants to shoot something at us from the south. But holy smoke, people aren't listening, are they? So, but this guy wants to put these on Guam, which would be a good idea for Guam. Remember, Guam is American territory. It is an American territory. People there are American, and they have no intention of not being American or seeking independence. They're happily American. So, yeah, that's what we're talking about here, guys. And it's Aegis ashore that they're wanting to put there. Now, let me move on. Yeah, here's the president, of course, of Guam, President Tsai Ing-wen. Pardon me if I murdered her name. I hope I didn't too badly. Here's another article. The Chinese government has no room for, this is from China, has no room for compromise or concessions on the Taiwan issue. China's foreign minister Wang Li, I've quoted him many times, said in a recent news conference. We urge the U.S. administration to fully understand the high sensitivity of the Taiwan issue. Yeah, okay. Completely changed the previous administration's dangerous practices of crossing the line and playing with fire. So they're trying to get the Biden administration to back off and quit doing the freedom of navigation exercises that we're doing in the ocean there. Let's go over here. It's not just Taiwan. Japan is open to deploying soldiers to the Senkaku Islands. So Japan is really wanting to defend these islands. And, that now there's that new law that China's passed that says their Coast Guard can fire on, enemy ships and tear down buildings or anything on any island that they happen to claim, despite the fact that other nations claim them. But if they claim them, they're theirs. If, hey, we claim this because a Chinese guy looked at it, 1,000 years ago, so it's ours. They probably claim Mars the same way in the future. Our guy said, looked up, they saw it, so it's ours. So what's the claim to the 9-dash line? It's all bogus. So the case is that there's a huge potential for conflict here, but all that we are in an active defense treaty with Japan. So this is something we could get drawn into. We could get drawn into a war with China over Japan, or other occasions too. The Philippines, perhaps. And here is Guam. The top U.S. commander of the Indo-Pacific. Now that is actually, yeah, this is Admiral Philip Davidson, one I mentioned earlier. I said that other article missed it. Yeah, that's what it is. The top U.S. commander of the Indo-Pacific pressed lawmakers on Tuesday, filled in for additional air and missile defense capabilities, which is I've talked about today. Guam is a target. I just mentioned this to you. Guam is not just a place where we believe that we can fight from, as we have for many decades. We are going to have to fight for it, i.e., it's ours to lose. That is what Admiral Philip Davidson is saying. That we stand a chance of Guam getting obliterated, and we may lose it, kind of like Taiwan, pretty much the same. That is what he sees. And China has kind of been talking about, tiers of islands of protection, not just in the inner tier, but another tier, second tier, third tier, which, basically taking the whole Pacific Ocean. So guys, this is what can we do about it though? What can be done about it? This writer here is talking about blockades. This is Sean Mirsky. He's talking about putting blockades in. And I'm not going to read this article. It's very lengthy. It's a two-part article, but he basically talks about the fact that let me stop the share. Hey, hello, how y'all doing? So, okay, a blockade is considered an act of war, by the way. But China's weakness, China's strength is their international trade. It's their manufacturing, but it's also their weakness. If you could choke China off, then China would be in severe problems. Now, they got enough reserves to keep their military going, but all the problems at home, they really start melting on them fast. So the writer is saying, hey, if we could just choke them off, but there's a lot of problems with blockades. They're very problematic because you wind up having a lot of blockade runners because, as the blockades exist, the value of the cargoes, the ships goes way up. And a lot of people think it's worth, trying to run a blockade. So if you wind up shooting a ship of a friendly country, then you get into it with that country. And so there's lots of problems with blockades. Well, he's suggesting a two-tier blockade, a blockade at front. If you get into this blockade, we're going to sink you in a close-in blockade. But if you're out here farther out, we're going to try to interdict as many ships as possible and search them and see what's going on. Problem is, a lot of ships on the way in, they can say we're going over here, but cargoes on ships are actually sold many times while the ship is actually in transit. This happens. And so a ship that may be going over here turns around and goes over here. So, even though you looked at the manifest, the orders, the stuff, and they're saying they're going to Singapore, they might be going to somewhere else inside of China, right? Guangdong, for example. So that could happen. And so that's why they're looking at a two-tier policy. At least this writer was promoting that for a blockade system. Of course, he also in this article said that we'd have to have the cooperation of Russia for the blockade to work. Right now, Russia is, leaning toward the side of China because we're really picking on Russia too. But as I've been saying for a long time, the only way to deal with China effectively is first make peace with Russia. And the other two, the big bear in the woods, the big elephant in the room is China. Russia, if we had a war with them, Russia could do us in, but Russia does not pose an economic threat to us. If we don't get in war with Russia, they're really not in a good position to do anything with us, to overturn our power or anything like that. Same with Iran, but they both could severely damage our country. They could both take out our power grid, for example, which I tell you is worse than a nuclear war, unless you live in a city. So, losing power grid is just as bad. You're going to starve to death in a big city. So it might be a slower death. Yeah, loss of power grid is worse. You're going to die, and you're going to die slower and more painfully. So the power grid loss is the worst thing you can imagine. The big thing here is that, again, we are really focusing on Russia, and Russia's done some things, but we need to try to find a way to at least have an understanding with them, like we did in World War II. They weren't our, the best people in World War II either, but they were allies against Nazi Germany. So we need to make a deal with Russia once again and work with them to contain China, because in the long run, Russia is also more worried about China than us, because we're not going to go over and take over Siberia and Asia and start moving in and then maybe heading toward Moscow. We're not going to do that. The Chinese are going to do that. I didn't say that as might either. They will do it unless Russia can contain it and stop it. The numbers, the demographics are on the side of China. Russia has to be scared to death of China in the long run. That's why they would be in their interest to change their tactics if we offered them the right kind of deal and focus with us on containment of China. There we go. Guys, and I say China, I mean the People's Republic of China, as ruled by the Chinese Communist Party. So I've talked quite a bit about them and other things. So that is it. That is one way to deal with this. We could develop longer range weapon systems, but God forbid if we get into war with China. God forbid. God help us. What should we do with Taiwan? Yeah, if we jump right in on it, we're going to have millions of people. We're going to lose millions of people. I think we should maintain the ambiguity we have today, just so we keep China guessing, because if they think we might hit them, it makes them a little bit more reluctant. Oh yeah, I just want to share an article. I'm afraid I bypassed it.